Welcome one, welcome all. I am Sprometheus, the internet's unfriendliest barista. And today we're back with another episode of the Over Extracted podcast. And I brought a guest in today who, much like many of the other guests so far, have been people who have kind of been part of my coffee journey, but also someone who knows a lot more about the current events within coffee that are happening right now, which I think everyone has questions about, myself included. So I want to introduce Pablo.
Hey, what's up?
And, I think Pablo was probably one of the first people coming into the coffee scene, myself not really knowing anything or anybody, that really made me feel welcomed in the scene. Because I feel like when you come into any hobby or any essentially group of friends, it's very weird to be that new person and come in, and it's easy when you have someone who's encouraging you to become part of it and bringing you into the fold. So that was one thing that I definitely wanted to say early on about my experience and my relationship with Pablo. So
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, as I always say, I feel like we have such an awesome community here in San Diego. Like, regardless of the ups and downs, like I feel like it's been super cool to see so many people blossom, and especially from our generation and before, now having their own shops and doing their own thing. And I feel like a lot of the people are still in it, and in different ways. So I think that's a super cool thing that we have going on in San Diego for sure.
And Pablo is, I'll let him get more into the meat of the whole thing, but sells green coffee, I guess, in the most basic terms. But I'd like to hear more, not only about that, but about your recent adventures in getting Q licensed. Is that the proper terminology? And
Q certified.
Q certified, that's what I was looking for. And then we can get deeper into all the other crazy topics.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for having me. Of course, it's been such a pleasure. I mean, I've known you for such a long time. And yeah, I think the main reason why I wanted to come on was to sort of like demystify the whole process of getting Q certified, what it means, what exactly you have to go through to get Q certified. That I thought would be like a really productive conversation to have for anybody that would be interested in learning about it. And then obviously Liberation Day, right? Is that what they're calling it?
It is.
And kind of really go through what that's going to mean for everybody in the industry going forward.
We mentioned before we even started talking about this, and when we were even just kind of talking about coming on the podcast about the Q, I think a lot of people probably have a different connotation of the word Q at this point, because there's just a lot of weird stuff that went on the last handful of years. Oh. But can you talked about demystifying that. Can you talk about, what motivated you to go down that road, and, talk about the process? Because I think a lot of people just think it's, I don't know how similar it is to becoming like a sommelier, but it's often compared to that. So if you can go down that road, I'd love to hear it. And I'm sure a lot of people would.
Yeah. What I meant by to talk about like demystifying it was, I mean, even myself, who I feel like have been around. So everybody in my office is Q certified, which is crazy. We have, other than me now, we have like 5 other people that are Q certified in my office. So even with that, and like throughout the years of working with people that are Q certified, there were still so many things that I guess I didn't quite understand about the whole process. And I do think the word gets put around. Like, so many people always reached out to me and they're like, why aren't you Q certified? As if it was something that was easy per se,
or inexpensive,
or just so I definitely wanted to like talk to everybody like listening, just kind of like letting them know how difficult it is, and all the steps and all the processes, even just for like information of you knowing what you're getting yourself into if you do decide to go the route of getting the Q. And we could start with your first question, which was, why did I even go down this decision to go through the process to get Q certified? And that is a good question. I feel like for many years, like I said, I've been trading coffee for almost 10 years. And people would always ask me like, they would almost be surprised that I wasn't Q certified. Um, and multiple people were always like, okay, when are you gonna do it, Pablo? And to me, just, I don't know, for some reason, never was like a thing of, I was never seeking a validation of having a certification to validate my worth within the chain on what I do. I feel like I draw most of the source of my validation is because I speak Spanish. I'm from South America. Like, I started as a barista. Like, all these things I feel like make me very secure on like what I do and confident in the way I speak about coffee, that I never really felt the need to have that as something to almost prove myself. Um, and then in a way, I feel like my value as a trader was always more the like, okay, I'm connecting you with the producer. It was never like, hey man, I found this like 88 scoring coffee, you got to try. Like, that's not the vibe I bring to the function.
Sure, sure.
And for me, it's always like people first, numbers later. But after many years of just kind of like putting it off for different things, I feel like every year I had some sort of like different project that I wanted to like accomplish, some sort of like sourcing trip or event that was just like already on my plate, that there were years where I was like, okay, for sure next year I'll do it. There were kind of like a lot of things that I just wanted to like have in place before I went into it, because I knew by talking to my coworkers and with other people that have gone through the process that it is a very like intense thing that you not only have to like reserve the whole week for, but also like prep before. And just by talking to people, I got that sense that it's like really intense.
Yeah, I've seen people on Instagram who are about to go through it asking for anyone and everyone to send them coffee samples just to taste and to calibrate and to do all these different things with, which is kind of interesting to think about. I don't know did you go down that road, just trying to taste as many coffees as possible? Is that, how do you study for the Q, I guess?
Oof, yeah. Well, just to finish off real quick
sure.
on like why I decided to get it. So then, last year, one of my friends from Ecuador like flew all the way to China, because there's a lot of Q programs. I don't know if they're cheaper or what it is, but I do feel like a lot of people recently have started to go to Asia for these Q courses. And he paid his way. He's a producer. And then talking to me, he was like, why haven't you done it? And he's new to coffee. Like, his family like has a coffee farm, but it's probably like maybe like his third year, like actually helping with the farm and stuff like that. He was like, if you have the backing of your company, like, why haven't you done it? And that was really kind of like my moment of like, okay, you know what, you're right. It was very inspirational that like you're going so out of your way to get it done. I have the resources and the because not only do you need the resources, but you also need the support, the lab, the coffees. Like, we're gonna go through that. And I was like, no, you're right. I just did it, and then it kind of worked out very nicely where we have Atlas is part of our company, and they're hosting a Q course in this was like last month. I forget, it was February.
Yeah,
March.
It's basically April.
It was
now,
It was like the first week of March. And they just opened that new office. I wanted to go visit. Then we have a program called the PACE program, and our PACE partners were going to get their Q cert that week too. So it just kind of worked out where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I signed up probably in like, I think it was like October of last year that I signed up, which is pretty late. I feel like most people, from what I heard, sign up like a good 6 to like a year before to kind of like prepare. But I did it. And then yeah, so that was kind of like the reason why I did it. I kept putting it off, and then there were so many people like Eric from Seven Seas. Every year, I swear he was like, "Okay, when are you gonna get it?" So it just felt like, okay, the timing felt right. I didn't feel pressure to do it in a way. It really came from that place of like, I should invest in my education after all these years.
Absolutely. I feel like if there's someone in the community that I remember who's done seemingly more for the community than for themselves, it's you, right? If I think about the early days of the San Diego Coffee Network or Cold Brew City, like any event that was happening in San Diego, you had your hands in it. If not, you were the like main person behind it. And so I can see why you said you had other things you were doing through all this time, like the last 10 years of focusing on helping other people along their journey or making something fun for the community to do. So definitely, treat yourself.
Yeah, and then so on the topic of like how to prepare yourself, right? Uh Before, what I would say, it's like you should really consider, w- if you want to get the cue, like really consider like your reasoning why you want to do it, right? Like I feel like this really is something for someone that is either cupping coffee constantly and their job consists in cupping and communicating coffee quality, right? That's like the
Sure, sure.
main thing. So I do feel like sometimes, um if you don't have that practice, it's going to be really hard for you to get it. Most people don't get their cue. In fact, like I was the only one in the whole course that got the cue, that walked away from the course with the Q certificate, which is pretty crazy.
Oh,
And
wow.
there were like 16 people in it.
Yeah, I saw that you were like studying with people and had other people that you were like maybe staying with while you were studying and doing all that.
Yeah, so just saying, like, you can sign up for this course, but it is not, they're not going to teach you how to cup. Like they're expecting you to walk in understanding how to do that. How to differentiate a coffee from like a 79 to an 87, and like know exactly what each number will represent from different countries. So if I do still think it, if you want to take this course as an educational thing and you're not really like set on, not everybody that takes the course will walk away with the certificate. And even post course, a lot of people just end up not ever getting the certificate. So even if you do want to invest in like an educational thing, is you don't expect to walk into this course thinking that you're going to learn how to cup, because that's really not what it's for. um, Most of the course consists on just literally teaching you how to take each test, and there's 20 tests. So like it's a whole 6-week program, sorry, 6 days, 6 days. And the first 3 days are basically, they're just literally walking you through how to take each test, which is insane.
Okay.
And then it's like a packed 3 days of just like testing.
Tests. So when it comes to the tests, is there such a thing as like when my dad dropped me off to college, he was like, remember C's get degrees? Is there like a point where is it grade like a normal test? Like is it
Um,
pass fail, or is it there like anything above a 70 or
Yeah, it depends on
65%
the
or
test, but what's really important is that you have to pass all 20 tests. Like you
okay,
can't,
so you miss one and you're done.
you're exactly. So,
And
which
can you
is
go back
so
and take
crazy.
that one test, or do you have to come back and take all the other tests?
It depends. Well, yes, you can take that specific test.
Okay.
So the way it works is 20 tests. I will kind of like go over what these tests entail, but um, so some are the only ones that you can't retake are going to be the general knowledge, which is like a multiple choice 100 question test, and the cuppings. There's 4 cuppings, and these you can retake like during the course. So you get your practice tests. Um, you just do once during the classes, and then you get the actual test. If you don't pass that first test, you do have a retake during the course that you can do on all the tests except, like I mentioned, the general knowledge and the cuppings. If you don't pass those during the course, you have to go to another course and pay for those the ones that you didn't pass.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of and I think they give you like a window. I forget. I think it's like 9 months within the time frame where you have to take them to like still. Once you're past that and you didn't take them, then you have to retake the course.
So
Yeah.
it's like, does the knowledge more, I guess some of, obviously the general knowledge and certain things like understanding tasting and cupping doesn't expire, but what changes in those 9 months to make it not, like, would you fall out of practice or calibration? Like, how does that?
I don't really know why they have that deadline. I guess well, if you think about it in a sense like even after you get the Q certificate, like you have to retake a calibration course every 3 years. So I feel like they're very on like just keeping control. So the CQI is the nonprofit agency that like has the grip on the Q. I mean, they invented
And
it,
that's
right?
globally, right?
Globally, yeah. There's just one body that and they have to regulate this. Then it has to be like pretty tight. Like the tighter and the more regulated that this is, the more validity there is to um just coffee scoring in general. We're not just throwing around numbers. They make it very clear throughout the course that these numbers represent like the livelihood of people and they're not to be taken lightly. So I really enjoyed that part, that it's like sometimes I feel like we lose touch on like just how much these numbers represent when it comes to like financially for the farmer and for the supply chain. So there's a lot of responsibility on just like throwing around these numbers, which is why they want to really have control on who gets this and why you have to literally pass every test to get the certificate, which I think is crazy, but props to them for that.
For sure. And speaking on like the emphasis of numbers, can you break down that grading scale a little bit for people who maybe don't understand like how that, like what a difference between like a 70 and an 80 or a 90 point coffee would be?
Well, anything specialty would be over 80 points.
Hmm.
So the range of what a specialty coffee is, it's pretty large. It's like anything over an 80. So, your standard Brazil could range from like a 79 to an 82. Then you have like your nicer coffees from like Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras. I would say most of those are going to be cupping between like an 83 to an 85. And then you get your like Kenyas, Ethiopias, obviously depending on the quality of the coffee
Sure.
that you're going to get, up to your like 88s max. So that would be the range of what most people are going to be tasting. But then there's like the commercial side, which is going to be anything under 80. They do throw those on the testing part as well. So you kind of have to understand just like what you're looking at and how to describe those coffees correctly. What I really look for coffee, and it's funny because even this morning, we were gonna try this really like wild um, coconut co-ferment coffee, and I was like kind of apprehensive just because these crazy like super fruity coffees, like I do like a good natural, but I still need to have like a good acidity. I can always taste the coffee like if it's like a lower grade coffee that was just like fermented with stuff.
Hmm.
Because it's gonna have that hollowness to it. It's gonna like that acidity. So it's like those are the things that you really need in a coffee, is that like awesome balance between like sweetness, acidity, body, obviously all those characteristics, right? And then like a complexity. Does it have some sort of uniqueness? So those are typically things that I look forward to a coffee. And it doesn't matter what process. It can be a natural, it can be fruity, but it's got to have a nice chocolatey part to it. It's got to have a nice body. It can't just be like fruity, fermenty, and then lack all these other things. Then it's going to like really lower the score. But yeah, scoring these coffees, honestly, I mean, there's so many brackets in the scoring sheet that to be calibrated with your teacher and to everybody in the class is it can be difficult. We did the practice cuppings, and it's really cool because then they log like every score that everybody gets on each little field, and he shows you like, okay, this is where the class is at. Um, to pass, you need to be in this range. So
Okay.
you really just get one practice cupping per. So there's
So you're essentially trying to match or get close to what your like teacher calibration is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you have the central milds cupping, and then you have the Africa cupping. You have a naturals cupping and an Asia cupping. So those are the four cuppings where you need to be calibrated, and I mean that really encompasses most coffees and most processes. So it's a thing where you could give a coffee, like if you give a coffee on the body an 8 and I give it a 7 for some reason, but then you on another one you give it a larger number. So no, not everybody's gonna score it exactly the same, but adding it up and everything, it needs to be within the same number,
Okay.
which is crazy because yeah, we're all gonna taste things a little bit different. But at the end of the day, that number really needs to represent what the coffee is. So it's really complicated. So if you're not cupping like regularly, like I feel like for me, obviously with my job, I cup at least twice a week, coffees from everywhere all the time, and I'm cupping with Q graders. So I always hear what they're saying and what they look for, and I'm not shy on like sharing what I think about coffee, and then we go back and forth. And yeah, that like if you're not getting that sort of like experience from day to day, like props to you for like going for it. And that's why a lot of people, like you said, like ask for samples and they do the cupping. But I personally, like, I don't know how I would, without cupping with other people that are Q graders, like I don't know how you could
Yeah, I feel like.
calibrate at that level.
Did you feel like your opinion maybe didn't carry as much sway with people who were Q graders before you got certified, or did you feel like that
Mm,
didn't matter so much?
I don't, I felt like I always shared my opinion on the coffees that I liked. Um, but I was always keen on like listening to what they were saying.
Sure.
I have the brain where I'm always like learning, and if someone didn't like a coffee and I really liked it, I always went back and like tried it. And for some other tests, this was very, it was positive that I did that. Like there's this one test, the roast ID, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, where you have to cup the same coffee in like different roast levels. There's like a correct level, and then like a baked level, and a under roasted level. And yeah, because I cup a lot with the Q graders in my office, they would always call it out. They'd be like, okay, well, this is under roasted, we have to recup it, or this is baked, we have to recup it. And honestly, like the first couple of years, I was like, man, I don't know what they're talking about. So I would always go back and like taste it and get it in my brain, like, okay, I see what they mean. Because sometimes it's sometimes an under roasted coffee, if you like acidity, can mask as a
Sure. Like you miss a lot of those like hay and those
right,
other like
especially like maybe
grassy.
at first when it's hot, you kind of miss
Yeah.
those. So, that was like a test that I feel like a lot of people struggled with, and luckily, like because of that, it was easy for me to be like, I know in my brain when like a coffee tastes when it's just good, I'm like, okay, this is the correct roast.
Mhm.
But now it's just kind of like ingrained. It's like
It's
I don't
just
really have to
instant.
think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found myself on a lot of the tests where it was like, okay, I just have to trust my palate. Whenever I taste something that is good, it means something. But it's like building that memory map of like what that means. Like, for example, there's this one test where it's called combinations, where they mix different levels of sugar, salt, and a citric acid in different cups. Some cups are gonna not have acid or sugar. Like it's called combinations because there's like an infinite amount of coffee. I
Sure.
think it's like 80 different combinations. I don't really know. And you have to guess. You don't have to guess. You have to know which level of sweetness, salt, and acidity they're putting. There's three levels. Low, medium, high. And it's very minimal. When I'm saying high, it's not like they're pouring sugar. Like I had the recipes, and it's like it's so hard to do on like a normal scale because it's so little amount of salt and sugar that you're putting in this. So it's really crazy. But I figured out that like if a cup had all three, it's good, right? Well, because
Balanced,
yeah,
basically.
it's balanced because it has the sweetness, it has the sugar. So immediately, if my brain was like, "Oh, this is like almost like when you have a pickle, you know, pickles have all three. They have acidity, they have sugar, and they have salt." So when my brain just went the same route, I was like, "Okay, this has all three, and which already helps you, and then you have to figure out the levels." Um, but yeah, those tests are really intense.
I can imagine. I mean, recently I descaled the decent, and you have to run a pretty high concentration of citric acid through it. I think it's like 300 grams to like 1.5 liters of water. And obviously, when you're flushing the system out, it takes a long time to run that through. And I'm like literally running it into a cupping bowl and like tasting it to try, because you stop smelling it at a certain point, but the taste is still there. And you're just like trying to, I'm like, oh, does it still taste like citric acid? Because I want to run coffee through it and have it, throw off, the balance of the coffee. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to just taste for that citric acid. So I can imagine, it's even more intense when you're looking for both or you're trying to find one that's balanced. So
Yeah, and you're being timed, and you're with a group of people, and you're in like in a dark room, so it's like so many things. Um, so yeah, I mean, kind of going down the list, I feel like obviously, like I said, there's the general knowledge test, which I found it to be difficult. And they don't really give you a lot of information prior to the test. Like they're really like, I feel like I was like, is there something I can do to prepare, read? And the teacher was kind of like, if you're a coffee person that deserves to have a Q certificate, like you should know these things. And it was like,
pretty
okay,
vague.
it's kind of exactly. And they like keep it vague on purpose. Um, but they did say like, they recommended to read the SCA books on water quality, brewing, and roasting. And yes, I read two of those, and I do wish I would have read the roasting one. I didn't. Um, so that test, it's 100 questions. You only get an hour. I finished like right on time, and you can only get like 25 wrong or something if to pass
So
or
like a
fail.
75% roughly.
Yeah, and so that test was the only one that's like you're in front of a computer. Everything else is like sensory. Also, another one that's really hard to prepare, where like I feel like if you don't work at an importer, I don't really know how you would do it, is the Ness du Cafe test. So it's 4 different tests of a total of 36 different smells in those little like bottles.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
That is super hard. Super hard. Like I remember like a good like month and a half maybe before the test, before the Q course. Before going home, I would run through the box, and it's really expensive. I forget how much it is, but it's expensive to buy this thing. It's only like made by this one company in France. Yeah, you have to memorize these smells, and these are like, artificially made smells that are meant to like represent something, and they have a name, and you kind of have to just like, and sometimes like what helps is obviously to smell them, write down what they remind you of, and then like somehow link that to what it actually should be. So
Okay.
and then you build that memory map, because when you're taking the test, you're going to smell it, and it's got to come in your brain like what that smell actually is, so like for example, um there's a smell called coffee blossom, right? Most people haven't even smelled a coffee blossom. I have, luckily, but this does not smell like anything like a coffee blossom. Coffee blossoms just generally smell like jasmine flowers.
Okay.
But this smelled like shampoo, like cheap shampoo. So yeah, in my head I was like, okay, when even the first time I smelled it, I wrote down shampoo, and then it helped me throughout the thing. But that was an easy one. But then you have like 5 different nuts. You have hazelnut, you have walnut, you have peanuts, you have almonds. You get tested on all of those, and those are like all minimally different in the little bottles. Plus, every kit is kind of different. So until the day of the test, you kind of don't really. So
Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, and you have to pass that. You have to like match it. The way the test is kind of like there are 2 ways you can screw it up. So you have to really, really know these smells. So yeah, it's pretty, that alone I feel like is so much, plus all the different tests. So yeah.
It definitely seems like a lot. So I guess the other question I have about the queue in general is, you said you don't know how people can do it without like the support of like a company or something behind you. So does Inter-American not only help you with like obviously giving you the experience to do a lot of cuppings and stuff like that, but do they offset the cost of this whole thing or
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely, I don't think, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have done it. For sure. Because if you think about it, it's like not only is the test really expensive, like the course itself is really expensive. I don't know the variation between like um locations, but it could run up to like $3,000 just the course. And then on top of that, obviously, if you don't do it in the city where you live, it's 6 days that you need to get an Airbnb or a hotel. You cannot work during those 6 days. It's so intense. It's like you get there at like 7:38, and a lot of the days we weren't leaving until like 5:30. So it's like you're there all day. And then at night you're really exhausted, and you should I took the time to like take advantage to like study my notes and stuff like that. So it's like even cooking and stuff was kind of hard. So it's like you need to buy food. So it's just a lot of expenses that add up, that I was like, man, yeah, like if you're a small roaster and you get it in your head that you're like, okay, I really need to have this certificate to kind of validate myself. Like, I mean, I just feel like there's so much better ways for you to spend that money.
And I don't think, as even from a consumer perspective, your average consumer really cares if the roaster has a Q grader certificate. Yeah, like $3,000 plus travel, plus room and board, plus not working for a week.
Yeah, and if you have to buy the kids and whatever, like
Yeah,
to
study
practice on the side, for
materials.
sure.
It's just, yeah,
It's a lot.
not that
But
viable.
regardless of that, I will say like it was so nice to yeah, I can't even think of a time where I took a week to like educate. Like education is so nice. I almost had forgotten. It's been so long, like, cuz even when I go to the farms, like I'm constantly, I'm like hosting people. I'm hosting the roasters and managing the relationship with the producers, and yeah, it is an opportunity for me to learn, but I am managing like all these other things to make the experience like awesome and stuff, and just it's different when I can like all I had to worry about was like myself and the learning part, and it was like so enjoyable to take the time to invest in my education. Like I felt like it had been so long, and it was really nice to just kind of like spend the time with these professionals and with the instructor. Drew was my instructor, and he was awesome, pretty legendary. And it was also like he was gonna teach it, and I've heard great things about him, so I was like, okay, I gotta do it with him. I have heard he's one of the more difficult, like also like more stricter on a lot of the.
Well, sounds like it. If,
Yeah.
1 out of 16 people came out of it.
But it also was hosted by Atlas at their new facilities, and um the office, the vibe, it was just like so soothing and like great for learning. Everybody was super respectful. The layout of the office was awesome for like taking little breaks here and there, and um the whole staff was very like nice, and they had like coffee brewed for us, and um just the whole vibe was just like so positive. And Drew was awesome because every morning he would give us this like talk on like, hey, don't be affected on like, if you don't pass a test, or if you find yourself like this is a lot, like this is a lot. Like he would just give us these like conversations that were very like realistic and managing like everybody's expectations. So at the end, everybody was, even though a lot of people didn't pass, like everybody was like in a very good mood and very like rewarded by the experience. Also, I will say probably the biggest feat and what I learned from the most was just kind of learning to manage that failure, like the fear of failure. Like I think for me is like really intense. And for example, I didn't pass the first round of the central cupping. No, sorry, the central the triangulation. There's also triangulations like on top of all of this. It's 20 tests. That one of the triangulations, the central miles triangulation, is so it was so difficult. Um, the first round of the test that we did, I did not pass that, and we learned about it probably like that afternoon or something, and then we were barely going into our second day of testing, and it's already in your head. You're like, man, I already failed the test. I only get like one more try. And it's super easy to just kind of get really nervous about it, and then you start questioning like, man, did I am I gonna mess up the other test? And but learning to navigate that and just put it behind you and move forward and really focus on the next test that you have, um was something that I felt like maybe I wasn't gonna be capable of, just because I'm a very anxious person. Getting past that, I feel like it just made me a better person.
I think that a lot of people kind of underestimate the skill of being able to like go to school and study and retaining information and being able to deal with that like missed question or failed test here and there that happens to like everybody along the way. I think it's one of those skills that, especially as we get older, we don't really cultivate that skill anymore because we're just in the workforce doing
Mhm.
workforce things, whatever your career direction is. Like it's very rare that I get confronted with a test anymore. You know what I mean? So I can see that being like a challenging thing to come into, at this point in your career, 10 years deep of selling coffee, and you're just like having to sit down and take tests for a week. It's just
Yeah.
like, I think actually the last test I took was to like get my license renewed. And I was like, this just feels very like it made me nervous, even though I'm like, I know what a stop sign looks like. So I'm just like, why am I nervous about this stupid test? But
Yeah.
I get
But
it.
I mean, in general, I feel like it was such a like I said, it was such a rewarding experience. Um and also on the part of like support, I do want to say, like, if you do think of doing this, like definitely find yourself a mentor, or if you're in San Diego or me, like definitely please reach out. Like I'm happy to like walk you through my experience, because obviously with 20 tests is just a lot. Everybody's different. Like some people excel on different tests. So you really have to know yourself as a cupper, like what you're good at. And like I had plenty of support in the way of like, even throughout the week, like certain people kept like in touch with me, and my coworker Dana, and like I mentioned, Eric from Seven Seas, obviously my whole family. But it was like those people that were like everyday kind of, that have gone through it, and be like, okay, you didn't pass that, it's okay, like you're gonna get one more test, and today, like really focus on, um they would give me like little tips here and there. And even if at the time of the test, like I forgot about it, like it just felt good to have a support from someone that's already taken the test and understands how difficult it is. Because after the whole thing, like you go home, and you're tired, like your brain is tired, and then you have to do it all over again the next day. So even though it sounds like a long time, like 6 days, it went by so fast. I felt like I was in that class like the whole time. I would only So what I did, I got an Airbnb with my coworker, who was also taking the course, and I signed us up for Yoga Pass, for this really cute like little yoga studio, literally right in front of where we were taking the everything was on the same street.
Okay.
So that really helped. And yeah, it was so nice to, like, after the class, we would go to yoga, and then go back to home and like eat, and then just like study. Luckily, my coworker, Zion, he brought the office's like Linus kit, which I didn't even think about. I didn't bring mine, the one we have here. He works at the Hoboken office. And he brought his, and as soon as I got there, I saw it, and I was like, oh my god, genius. That for me worked really well. If anybody's thinking of doing it, like definitely do that. Stay up there, get your Airbnb. I can give you the details. It's like across the street from the class. Go to the yoga studio, and just it all really helped. Also, getting little tips here and there. Like for example, my coworker Dana told me that the whole week I should really like limit myself on eating stuff that's like heavily spiced.
That's what I was
And
literally thinking that.
she gave me this list of the things that she ate for, and she is pretty iconic because she passed it also in one go. I don't even think she did retakes. I did too. So obviously I listened to her, you know what I mean? It
Sure.
was like and she's she was a college basketball player, so she just has this like mentality of the sportsmanship of like going
Sure.
really intense. And that's how I took it, because whenever she would talk about it with me for so many years, I've known her for so long, and anytime I would bring up the topic of the Q, she would tell me like just how intense she was, and how she like studied so much and everything. And I was like, okay, that is the energy I'm gonna go with. I'm
Yeah.
gonna like
Why
I even
not?
put my like um
AirPods.
AirPods while taking the test. Everybody during lunch would order like their Thai food, Chinese food. I would literally had like a turkey sandwich on like white bread, just white bread mayo
You're like,
and,
wow,
and turkey
Pablo's boring.
for 6 days. So by the last day, when they told me that I passed all the tests, I cried. And I don't even think I was crying because of the joy of it. I think my body was just worn from just like eating bland food.
Oh God. Yeah, see that'd be very hard for me. I feel that was my thought too when you're talking about like coming back and your brain being tired and your palate being probably blown out. Like my first thought would be I'm super tired. I'm ordering like, Taco Bell on DoorDash. I'm like wondering I was gonna ask you like what does someone going through a cupping thing eat, and you went there before I even got there. I would go crazy though. I have to have spice in my life.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, plenty of people did it, but hey, I do want to say like it
But you were
wasn't the
the I mean,
best. So
I was gonna
I listened
say
to Dana. I mean, for anything, especially for something like this, and knowing how she did it in such an iconic way, I was like, okay,
I can see that though. I can see how like even just,
it's game on.
having
Like you gotta go with that mentality of like, okay, every little thing the teacher would say, I was like writing down. And
especially like at lunch between tests, like you're definitely not going to want to eat something wild because I could definitely, for me, like when I go to Thai food or Indian food or whatever, I'm like, give me an 8, 9, or 10. Like I want my food to be painful. And so I feel like if I was doing that between cuppings, it would not.
yeah, so I mean that's mostly it. But yeah, it's this 20 tests. We could talk about it for forever, but I just want to say like yeah, for sure, it's definitely one of those things. Like really consider the reasoning why you're doing this, and like I said, you can go, but you're really gonna just learn how to take these tests. They're not gonna teach you how to cup.
I guess before we move on to pricing and Liberation Day and all that fun stuff, I am curious because you brought up co-ferments, and I think that's one of those things. It's a conversation that I've had with a lot of other coffee people, and it's a pretty like divisive topic. And personally, like I think they're fine. Like, but I do find them, as you mentioned, maybe not hollow because I don't really have the palate to probably say like the coffee that started out wasn't like a high quality, but I feel like they're very one note. Like they're very uninteresting overall. Like you get a strawberry co-ferment, and yeah, it tastes like strawberry, or you get a grape co-ferment, and yeah, it tastes like grape Kool-Aid. But that's about as interesting as it gets for me. So I was like curious how or do Q graders even grade co-ferments? Like how would you even go about that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I did bring up that question like during the course because they don't include that.
Sure.
I think they're trying to figure that part out still. It's definitely not part of the course. On the naturals table, like you just get like naturals. Maybe later, but as of right now, it's not part of like the Q grader. I personally like it, it's just like with any processing, like it can be done well and it can be done like wrong. So I feel like it matters like what cherries you're starting with, and then how you're processing it, because it could go wrong, but it could also go well. And I've had great experiences with co-ferments, and I've had some like not so great experiences. But overall, I feel like yeah, as long as you start off with like good coffee, and then the processing is done meticulously, like you're gonna get a good cup of coffee. On this topic, definitely I do want to shout out my friend Camila from Con Cara de Café, because I feel like, especially on the topic of co-ferments, like especially when there was the whole drama with Panama. at first I was very much like team uh don't do it, or like, I kind of had a stigma also around it. To me, just it like just kind of looked really gross the way they do it, like blending throwing the liquids in there. Like it just, to me, just looks really gross. But yeah, at the end of the day, I love the post where she was just like, it's not your coffee, it's the farmer's coffee. They can do whatever they want with it. You know what I mean? And it's like, if that's what they want to do with their coffee, like, who are we to say like that's wrong or not wrong? We're not
Yeah,
making it. And yeah, so I feel like that's when that really resonated with, that is a perspective that I feel like we all need to have. A farmer can do whatever they want with the coffee. So if we're really not in the position to be saying like it's wrong or right. We can say we like it or we don't like it, but to give it a negative or positive connotation is really not our place to do it, unless we're
true.
growing and processing coffee, I guess.
I worry that people from, the Western world or whatever, whoever's buying good green coffee from someone, I worry there might be too much pressure on farmers to take a substantial portion of their crop and do some kind of like crazy experimental processing that could potentially ruin it. I just hope that there's not too much pressure coming from one side, because this is like obviously a crop that they can, harvest only during a small portion of the year, and that's like their entire income.
Yeah.
For like a roaster in California to be like, oh, you should do a co-ferment, that'd be sick, and like for them to risk
Yeah.
a significant portion of their crop
Well,
seems
my
kind of messed up.
experience has been like in general, farmers are not that open to changes like that. So if you see the ones doing it, it really comes from them wanting to do it. And obviously, because of the risk, a lot of them start off with like small batches. But then a lot of them get really excited and get really into it. I mean, I feel like there's certain farmers that have built so much of their market around it, and then others will see and follow and stuff like that. But in general, obviously, I understand your worry, but also a lot of the roasters don't want to pay it. So I feel like they really don't have, the people that are asking for these coffees are not the people that are gonna buy a whole production of they're gonna buy 5-10 bags max. So there is that.
That's true. I feel like when I see co-ferments, there's like 5 farms that they come from more often than not.
Yeah.
And
In
it's usually,
Colombia mostly.
yeah, definitely Colombia. So I feel like it's not something that's been pushed.
But it's also like so much work goes into it that like the farmer has to be invested in the way of like him wanting to do it, because there's a lot of extra work on top of how already.
And science.
Yeah. And well, I mean, it's just a lot of work. Coffee in general, like in general, that whole thing is science, like from beginning to end, even a washed coffee. So it's like just on top of all the work that already exists on managing a farm, growing the coffee. If a producer wants to do something like this, it's because they are generally interested. And there is a certain brain in certain people who love to experiment and have time and patience to do it. Some others don't. So
Sure. And are willing to absorb the risk of, damaging some coffee in the process of
yeah,
figuring it out.
and some of them have have fun doing it. So that's definitely a thing.
All right, so let's dig into the interesting recent developments in terms of the Liberation Day and
Historical.
others. Yeah, it is historical.
To me, it's interesting because like the use of the word liberation, because in the historical context of economics, like liberation or like liberal economic policies means exactly the opposite of what we're doing.
Free trade.
So exactly. So I'm like, okay, was that a poor choice, poor wording choices, or is this on purpose? I don't know. We'll never know.
I think it's basically it's a liberation of America from the way he sees it, and the reins of people charging tariffs on our stuff and whatever, like the whole process. But it's interesting because when I watched the speech originally, or like the when he first showed the chart of all the countries, I'm like, oh, I don't see, like, I saw Brazil, which is obviously a huge, one of the biggest producers. Vietnam is on there, which is another huge producer. But I'm like looking through that one chart that they showed, And I was like, I don't see Colombia, I don't see El Salvador, I don't see Ecuador, I don't see like a bunch of other. But then I saw the second chart, and I saw, okay,
Well, and not only that, which I feel like there's still a lot of confusion around it, but it's supposed to be a universal tariff.
yeah, 10% I think across the board.
Right.
Yeah, but like Brazil, I think was like 30 or 40%. It was like higher numbers for Brazil. I
And
think
Vietnam was pretty
which
high.
are huge
Yeah.
for. So even coffees that are commercial grade, quote unquote, or Robusta, people who are buying Robusta from Vietnam are going to end up, paying a significant amount more. And, obviously your commercial grade coffee that you get at the gas station is obviously going to go up too. Everything's going up.
All coffee is imported.
Yeah.
And all imported goods are getting a tariff. So yeah, this is pretty major. Like I said, the last few months, everybody's been so stressed about the Canada and Mexico. All eyes were on Mexico. There is no worse thing for business than uncertainty. And it's been pretty terrible, because everybody's kind of holding off. Everybody was holding off, which is pretty sad because ultimately who gets hurt is the producer. Nobody's like excited to do business. So this was happening with like Mexico, everything else was going normal. Then we get thrown in the fact that everybody's going to get tariffed. Then all of a sudden it's just like, whew, man. I mean, the last couple of days have been pretty intense. I think people are not fully aware of what this will mean. We're going to see an upcharge of anywhere from 50 cents to $2.50, depending on the country, that are going to get passed down to the roaster, right? The way this works, if the coffee has left these countries before the 5th, so April 5th, like the BOL, the document needs to say like the coffee departed before this date. Once that container gets to the port, there's going to be the tax officials or tariff officials at the port, and they're really the ones that are going to be like, okay, this is how much you're going to have to pay because of where it's coming from. And the importer is the one that has to pay that upfront cash, like here, or you can't get the container out of the port. So importers, in order to survive, have to pass that cost straight to the roaster, right? So I just so there's no like confusion on like how this works. Like it's not like the exporter is gonna get charged, the farmer's not gonna get charged. This is something that the importer has to pay. If not, the coffee is gonna stay at the port. People haven't still thought about it, but if you think about it, it's like that's a lot of capital that needs to be free just to pay this cost that is not an investment cost. And then the importers are not really going to like make that money back until they sell the entire container, if they're even like good at organizing themselves to charge that exact same amount through their invoices to their roasters. And even then, a lot of these roasters have terms, so then that's even going to get delayed. So yeah, I feel like this is going to be pretty intense.
And when you say terms,
pretty soon. Mm-hmm.
Does that mean like people who have like pre-ordered or basically paid like ahead of time?
Nobody pays ahead of time.
I guess when roasters have terms, right? Doesn't that mean that they bought, or like maybe
by terms I mean like payment terms?
Yeah,
so it's like,
they didn't necessarily pay, but they agreed to buy this certain amount for this certain dollar price. So like you guys are in the hole for whatever that price is, or
we're not.
Okay.
There is, and this will depend on each importer, I guess, to a certain degree, but just think about the consequences. Every major coffee importer uses the GCA terms. There's a note that the contract is basically to mirror those terms. Not all the terms are on there, but a responsible roaster needs to understand what that means.
Okay.
Within those terms is any sort of like government imposed tariff put on the importer is to be paid by the buyer.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see how. I think it's still too early for me or even anybody. I don't think a lot of the importers have like posted like official like communication on like how this will be passed. I feel like a lot of them are struggling. It's really complicated because if you think about it, some invoices are gonna have like 6 different coffees. Each country is gonna have a different tariff. We'll have to manage like knowing at what point each coffee arrived, if it's before the date or after the date, or so it's and then I think the goal of the president was for these to be negotiation points. So if at some point the tariff changes, we gotta recalculate. So it's pretty crazy. It's very intense. Like even like in meetings, like trying to come up with a way in which to do this, like there's a lot of like missing information. There's still this is like I said, unprecedented. So this is very complex, you know, because a lot
Sure.
of transactions are not one coffee to one invoice. Very rarely. Of course, those will be easier, but I'm in my head, I'm like, most people buy like at least 4 different coffees on each invoice. But yeah, the thing with contracted coffee, I mean, if you think about it, that the tariff cost, anyway it happens, has to be passed on to the roaster.
Okay. Okay. And then obviously that cost, I mean, I can't speak for every roaster, but I'm assuming that goes passed on to the consumer.
Yes.
Because
And this is how it's going to go on any supply chain. And if you think about it, I was thinking about this on my run today. I was like, okay, sugar for the coffee shops, you know, that's going to be a big one. Also, chocolate.
we don't grow that here.
We don't grow those here.
No.
So your cup of coffee, like it's not just going to be the coffee. All these other things are going to, everybody right now I feel like is struggling to realize like how
Your espresso machine?
are we going to start flavoring their coffee with corn syrup? I don't even know.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parts and pieces. Because the conversation now is like I said, espresso machines. Obviously, there's manufacturers, I guess, here in the U.S. that make espresso machines, but they also use a lot of imported parts. It's just like cars, right? Where people are like, oh, well, you buy an American car, you skip the tax. But right now, that might be the case. But they are working out a way to figure out how to like literally compartmentalize based on the number of like imported parts that are in the transmission of a Ford F-150, right? To like change that tariff rate and to put that into the cost of the car. So like it's just going to be very difficult to maneuver.
I feel like obviously the first even month, like people are going to struggle to even figure out how to pass on that cost. But at the end of the day, it will get passed on, you know, because if not, even if we pass the cost, like I mentioned, like it's going to put importers in a bind because of that free capital that they're going to need at the point. And, you know, right now, especially with coffee, it's like we have those heavy like importing seasons, like that's literally right now with all these containers from Central America arriving at the same time. I'm talking like each container is going to be like around $20,000 that an importer needs to have.
Like on top
ready.
of what they paid for the coffee to begin with.
Yes. Yeah. That is going to have to be paid to the tariff official at the port.
Because a container is like what? How is it, like a ton, or what's the weight of a container?
42,500 pounds.
Yeah, so like definitely pricey per container.
Yeah, so it's around $20,000. So it's like if you think about it, if we get 40 containers arriving in 1 month, how much money that is, right? And this is money that we didn't have planned for it. Yeah. And so yeah, okay, your contract says we sold, but no, it's like this, it has to get passed to the roaster. If not, there is no more importer. And then there is no coffee, and then producers don't get paid. So this is how it's gonna roll out for sure. What I was thinking, it was funny, not that you asked for my opinion on this, but I was like, if there was to be a boycott, it would be for all importers, shoes, coffee, everything, to just like not pay the tariff and just leave all those containers at the port. And then like, you know, but it would have to be like a very, everybody just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
That would be crazy in a hypothetical situation. But yeah, it's going to be really crazy because like I said, importers are going to have to have that free capital. I don't think all of them are going to be able to. Even someone as big as us, I'm like, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to quickly pass that cost on to the customer? And then how quickly are they gonna be? Yeah, so it's gonna be a very interesting year or 4 years, or I don't know how long this is gonna go. But this is pretty major, and I do question. I mean, there has been a lot of communication on an Instagram, but I don't fully think people realize the implications of something like this happening.
No, I mean, I've seen, like, even I saw you post a couple people talking about it over the last, like, couple days, and I've seen
It's been like 24 hours.
yeah. I mean, because it's been a conversation that's been kind of floating for a while. I remember when I even had Gerardo on,
Mhm.
a couple months ago, we were talking about Mexico tariffs briefly, and, like, we weren't really sure because there was just so much of a will they, won't they type of
Well,
situation.
exactly, right. I mean, we technically still haven't seen the first of it, right? It's supposed to happen with stuff that's arriving that didn't left port after the 5th. So it's still
So a couple more days, but
yeah.
yeah,
So but
it's coming.
once those coffees start arriving, and then um our like importer person starts asking for that money, it's that we're gonna see that's gonna speed up the process of like things changing pretty quickly. And like I said, depending on the country, the minimum, like a 10% would be 50 cents, and then up to the 48% for like I think it was Indonesia or Vietnam, and that's like
Yeah, it was high.
$2.50 on top. Obviously, that depends on the level of the coffee market, but um, on top of the price of the coffee that you already
You already
pay.
bought.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's gonna be interesting to I mean, I say interesting, I don't know if that's the right word, but how it's gonna also affect, like, when you mentioned, InterAmerican is part of Atlas, like, it's a big company. I see a lot of people importing from, like, small, like, I don't necessarily call them mom and pop importers, but there are some who have just relationships in, like, Ethiopia or one specific region, and even just bringing in one container, it costs them $20,000. That's crazy. Like,
Hmm.
I can't imagine there is a whole lot of people who are prepared or have that, or maybe even have that in their coffers, but we're waiting to use that for literally running a business or
Yeah.
payroll or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
so
it's
it's really scary. Obviously those are things that are affecting us over here, but then like I said, there's no worse thing for business than uncertainty. So then like all these projects, all these cool things, all the microlots, all the fun stuff that like I've personally been working on for years, it's like all of a sudden it's like how do we have the capacity to even think about that? You know what I mean? And it sucks. It's a pretty rough time. It's pretty like you almost feel defeated because the whole beginning of the year, I'm huge on Mexico. That's been like my thing for a minute. And it's like, um, luckily we were able to buy some stuff like at the beginning of the year before the whole like tariff thing like came about because we were a little early on it. Luckily. And then the tariff communication happened about the 25% from Mexico. And that really halted us from buying any Mexico, and then this is like the stages where we buy Mexican coffee. So then now with this happening, it's like, oh man, our not only are we gonna be able to want to buy it, but our people gonna be like our customers gonna be we're really gonna need that like firm interest in buying these coffees. It's probably gonna be like a back-to-back sort of sale business if we even do it. Um so those things, like especially when you work on these things, because it takes years to develop, it's crazy how impactful this is on for a lot of people. Because these are the fun things that you like that I personally like about coffee, and then to not be able to do them, roasters are gonna be very squeezed for and then ultimately is the consumer going to be open to paying $7 for a drip.
and are there farmers, do you think, that maybe see a decrease in people buying their coffee or even importing their coffee and moving into different crops?
We haven't gone into that stage yet. Luckily, I feel like for the last few years, most coffee producing countries have realized that the US is not a good market. As much as we
Yeah.
like to think of, we're like super stingy. We're still very like colonial minded. Like we're not the most progressive of the buyers. And we just have these like toxic mentalities still when it comes to
True.
like buying
Business and
coffee, and
stuff.
it's just like very much ingrained in the American culture. And I feel like now that producers are exposed to different markets, especially like Asia, Middle East, um, even their own burgeoning like consumption within these countries, I feel like the US market has become less of a, it's still obviously a big consumer of coffee, but especially when it comes to the world of microlots, it's like a lot of people are like,
They go to like whenever I see the microlots, they're going to like Korea and
yeah, because
China
if you think
and
about it, it's like people think $5 is a lot here to pay for a pint of coffee, you know, and they're expecting this crazy. So I feel like, yeah, realistically, I feel like even some of the newer producers, they're just bypassing the US. They're just like, no, we're good. Exactly. So especially now, I feel like, luckily, that has already been kind of like the situation. So like it's kind of worked out where I feel like there will be a market for the coffees if they end up not coming here to the US. Um, in a general sense, I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. I'm
It's hard
not.
to
It's
predict at
hard
this
to
point.
predict all of these things, and even with the coffees, you know, for example, I was thinking about it. We were all so worried about Mexico. The 25% tariff was really scary. Now it ends up they're only going to be in the 10% bracket. So all of a sudden, Mexico is going to be a good country to buy coffee from.
Sure.
Um, is everybody going to rush to buy coffee from Mexico? That's going to rise the price of the coffee
Yeah,
because
supply and
they're going to be
demand starts to
right.
get
So it's
yeah.
like no matter how you look at it, things are going to be vastly different. And yeah, so I would say like get ready and don't be afraid to pass those costs on to your customers. You know, everybody's gonna have to, and I feel like everybody's gonna have to be fast about it and realistic and just communicate with your traders as much as you can.
I think
I'm surprised how few calls I got today. I don't think anybody called me today asking about this, and my mind is blown because literally yesterday I was like on the news ready to like talk about it, and then I was even messaging like our New York office like really late in the day, and I was like, okay, this is happening. What are we gonna do? Communication. And then today I walked into the office like ready for like the phone to one person called me.
Is that like an American roaster calling? Or is
No,
it
he was from Mexico.
a producer? Yeah, so I feel like from the American perspective, I think that a lot of this just it hasn't been fully grasped yet.
This is all very new. So I'm from Ecuador. I've was raised understanding what tariffs mean, aranceles. Like it's a word that we actually use a lot because it's part of our economy. Um, Here, obviously,
People
people
don't know
have
what it
no
means.
idea what it means. Like we've had to go to the basics of explaining what it is to
Like,
grown adults.
well, I think the big problem is like it's been explained wrong in the media for months now, where it's like, oh, we're going to tariff them and this and that, as though they're paying for it, as it's going to like lift us up as Americans. But no, it's essentially, as an American, it's a
You're
tax.
taxing your own people.
Yeah, we're being
For
it's
good
a
stuff,
it's a
yeah.
tax. It's like a sales tax.
Yeah.
Just a blanket 10% at least, if not up to what 40 some odd percent. So it's interesting to see that, and to see like the American perspective is obviously just a little bit skewed. But I think in time, the American population, I don't think, is revolutionary, more or less. They're not going to push back until it really gets to be a lot. And I think that if everything starts going up in cost, I think you're going to see a lot of pushback. But it'll be interesting to see how things progress over time, and how once this actually people start to feel it. Because right now it seems very much like theoretical. Like we watched the guy on the news and he held up the thing and he pointed out the numbers, and we're just like, that's supposed to help America. But then I don't have any money in stocks, but if you look at the way the markets, like you said, like volatility is not good for business.
Mhm.
And so every business is like, ooh, we're pulling back. And so it's definitely going to be a very interesting, if the last few months have been any, or like last month, I guess, or two, been any sort of like clue, it could get pulled back as fast as it came out. But that's, I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see.
that's all I can really speak about is like the reality on the ground. I feel like obviously with the prices already being high, that was putting already a lot of strain on the entire supply chain. Um, and then on top of that, then this now, obviously this is just mostly affecting the United States. We're not the entire world. Sometimes I
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah,
Because my friends from Mexico are messaging me. They're like, "Are you guys prepared?" And I'm like, literally, no one even understands what's actually happening. They were like, "Oh shit, good luck."
Yeah, I think also that's definitely a very like American coded experience too, to kind of feel like we're the whole world. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that. Even in like my mind, to a certain extent, I'm like thinking about, oh, well, what if Americans don't buy coffee? And you made a great point.
But I
that,
would
like,
say, like, if you're a roaster, if you work with me or with anybody, it's like, don't. It's hard. I almost have this strategy of like keep working with the producers or the projects that you like. Maybe buy less. Maybe do buy some cheaper coffee or like lower scoring coffee for some blends or something. But like, don't lose the connection to certain coffees because of this. Like, if you were buying 5 bags of a microlove from a producer and now all of a sudden the coffee's more expensive, I know it sounds crazy. Buy 1 bag, buy 2 bags, but like don't lose that connection. Like I'm down to work with you on that front, but like what really like would be devastating for me would be to like lose those relationships all of a sudden. It's almost like don't feel like because of this is just closing the doors. Like keep those relationships alive, and you just have to understand the risk that importers and the situation that we're about to face, and why you're just not gonna go call your importer and have like all these crazy coffees like available all the time. This is the first time where we haven't had any Guatemala for a month, which is insane. But it's like this is the situation we're at. Luckily, we're a very like conservative thinking company, and like you know, we really slowed down our purchasing like months ahead. Because that's the thing too with coffee. It's like you buy everything, nothing gets shipped 3 months after you buy it. And then even after it ships, nothing starts landing another month later. So it's like 4 months, right? If we would have stopped buying now, like it wouldn't have worked out. We would have had like all these shipments come in right now. Um, but no, we started a while back, and it's been really like painful. But now I'm in a situation where like, yeah, because if we get 20 containers arriving at a port in one day, like where are we gonna get all that money? Yeah, it's pretty insane. So like the people that did, I don't know. It's just it's a lot of factors. So just be aware of where this is putting your importer. I feel
sure,
like a lot of the times we really get very little like understanding of what we do. A lot of the times we're seen as like the bad guys in the situation, and we're like we're financing everybody basically.
true.
And then on top of this happens. So just be aware if prices go up or whatever. It's like we're not, it's not like we're trying
We're
to
not
make a
gouging
profit.
you.
And no, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I think,
Or if we're not down to like bring in some crazy expensive microlot, it's like we also have like limited capital. Like we have to be smart on what we are gonna be investing our money in. But obviously, like I said, my dream is to like keep bringing coffees from the producers that I love. So that's gonna be a battle that we're all gonna have to like work on it together.
yeah, I mean, it might come down to just, having a certain number of bags from each region, like knowing what you're going to pay in tax and being able to track that more specifically. It's a very complex
Yeah,
situation.
but this is the reality that we're about to face.
Yeah.
If this actually comes to
Continues.
fruition, and
Yeah, like the
we'll
5th or
see how
whatever.
long it goes.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I guess I can speculate, but I just feel like everything is just always so like up and down, left and right. And so it's like, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I think in the grand scheme, at least, more often than not, the coffee community at least can come together and understand. And that's why I thought it was really important to have you on too, to especially during this very specific time where you can shed some light on it. within my audience, who probably very few of them are actually roasters or buying green coffee. More of them are probably consumers of coffee. So it's, something that's important for everybody to hear more than just roasters or people in the importer exporter business, because it's obviously trickling down to the consumer. And I think it's easy to get frustrated when the bag of coffee you bought on April 4th is 10% higher on April 5th, right? So it's definitely something that we're all going to have to contend with, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think today with the conversation with my customer, obviously I sounded pretty stressed, and he was like, "Man, I can't even make you laugh today." And I'm always like down to laugh, and I think he understood the reality of it. But he was like, "But you know what? Don't worry, because everything's gonna like this is a conversation that's gonna happen on all supply chains, not just you this time." Because with the market conversation has been a little harder because it is a coffee specific thing, the rise of the coffee market and the volatility of the coffee market. So that is something that is harder to explain, even just to roasters, let alone roasters to their customers, be like, why is this particular commodity and all the complexities
That's
that
a
go
lot to talk
behind
about
it.
at the register.
Right. But now it's almost like, okay, well, now it's like everything. It's like it's on the news. So I think it might be less difficult to convey than other situations we've been at already before.
Yeah, I think hopefully the expectations will be, realistic from a consumer aspect, because everything has gone up. I feel like very little do we actually produce in the US for the most part, at least like from the ground up. So I think you're going to see that, you know, in the grocery store or everywhere else, furniture, cars, electronics, all those things are going to go up. And so it's just a matter of realizing, well, my morning cup of coffee is going to go up too. Like, it's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like like I said, I was at another podcast earlier in the year, um, and my message was like, regardless of everything happening, like we truly need to keep that like positive energy alive. I know it's really hard, but it's like what is making us happy is like those special coffees, those special relationships, those special projects, uniting communities. So like we can't forget about that,
And
and I
appreciating your cup of coffee just a little bit more, knowing that, like,
yeah, like that really is what drives specialty coffee, so we cannot forget about that. And I think we're gonna get through it. It's one of those things where, like I said, it's gonna hit everybody. But yeah, don't lose those relationships and still be involved. And communicate with your trader as much as you can, for sure. Stay in the loop. And like I said, I feel like a lot of people are, the hardest part is going to be the logistics of like transferring those costs into, this is the first time we have to do this. So everybody's going to have like different ways
scrambling.
of doing it. Yeah, like percentages is going to be averages. Like nobody really knows yet. Everybody's going to do it a little different. So just understand that like behind all the work that we already have, like that's been thrown at us like overnight.
Yeah, I mean, having to pay, 10% more for your cup of coffee or whatever is a lot less work than whoever's running the accounting over at Atlas. I feel like they should get a raise too at this point, considering that's going to be a whole shit show of an experience.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah,
It's all very fresh. It's all very unique.
So I would just ask, like, for my customers listening to this, like, just be aware. Processing orders is definitely going to take a long time just to make sure everything gets calculated correctly, on top of all the other things that go behind it. But still to this day, nothing makes me happier than like going to a coffee shop and seeing like one of my coffees there. So there's still that.
Well, I definitely see that. I see your influence everywhere. It's funny because I swear I go to like all these coffee shops and everybody knows Pablo. Everybody. And I had Eric from Gentile here today. He was helping me with a blind taste test. So he was pulling shots on both these machines so I could try them out. And I was like, oh, I got Pablo coming. He's like, oh, Pablo Lara? Huh. sick. Tell him I said hi. I was like,
Oh, I
yeah.
love it.
So I was like, yeah, everybody knows Pablo. Everybody loves Pablo. So I definitely just appreciate you taking the time, after work to come here and hang out and chat about stuff that I'm sure you've thought about or talked about quite a bit over the last. I guess no one called you except for one person, but you were prepared. You came prepared with like worksheets. You're ready to cover the topic. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming in and
These are two awesome topics. Honestly, like my background is in history. So like talking about this whole tariff situation is like super interesting to me. So like feel free to like reach out if anybody has any more questions. Same with the queue. I wish I would have, it's like reach out if I can be a resource to the community. Like I'm happy to.
yeah, where can people find you? Is like your Instagram or your
Yeah, Instagram I think is a coffee playtime.
at Coffee Playtime on Instagram. Anyway, thank you so much for coming
Thank you,
again and taking time out of your
yeah.
busy schedule to come talk about all this crazy shit with me. And maybe we'll catch up again in the near future and we'll have a different conversation. Hopefully this doesn't last super long. But if it does, you've got people in the background really trying to make this stuff make sense and work for everyone. And hopefully, people can just keep their eyes focused on specialty coffee and the community and being kind to each other and helping each other out when they need to. Cause it's tough. It's a tough moment for everyone in basically every market. So
yeah.
With that said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the conversation. If you have any questions, of course, drop them in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.
Thank you.